Okay, so we'll start by setting a motivation for today's session. I think you're going to listen to the teachings on meditation and engage in the practice of meditation. For that purpose, we going to begin with some prayers and try and think, we're not just learning these techniques for ourselves alone, but we're learning these techniques so we can become a fully enlightened Buddha and liberate all sentient beings. You know, try and have the vast scope of the Bodhisattva while we engage in this practice. So we'll do brief meditation, set of prayers to start. So visualizing in the space in front, Shakyamuni Buddha surrounded by the Pandits of Nalanda and so forth, and the tantric lineages above, and deities of the Yidam deities and the Dharmasetas and Dakinis below, and surrounding you all sentient beings, and think we're going to lead them in the prayer. So we can lead all these sentient beings in this prayer with us. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Siddhartha of the world, supreme guide of beings who subdue, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Siddhartha of the world, supreme guide of beings who subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Siddhartha of the world, supreme guide of beings who subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. And then we'll offer the mandala, just a short mandala. Om Sashibuki Yoshi To Traviravli Nine Yembadi Sangye Shindu Mikti Huwa Drokuna Doji Chopasho Jetsun Lama Dampa Kina Ichoku Ka Kien Si Shuzen Jita Sampe Tuzi Ima Javi Chopi Japa Bhaktu So Idam Gu Namandala Kavi Tayami Refuge. Sangye Chona Soni Chonam Chanchu Patu Tani Kapsu Chi Taki Jinso Gipe Sonangi Dola Penshir Sangye Rupa Sho Sangye Chona Soni Chonam Chanchu Patu Tani Kapsu Chi Taki Jinso Gipe Sonangi Dola Penshir Sangye Rupa Sho Sangye Chona Soni Chonam Thanchu Padu Dani Kapsuchi Taki Chinik Sogi Pesunangi Drola Penchir Sangye Dupo Oh. So before we kind of get into the topic of the teaching today, we'll just give a bit of background. So this series will be a really short series, I suppose, a couple of weeks teachings, mainly on meditation. So starting with each session, will start with a brief teaching or talk, discussion about the preliminaries to meditation, the actual meditation, the faults and the antidotes, and the stages of accomplishment of calm abiding as well. And then we'll follow that up with a practice, do some of the meditation ourselves, because if you don't actually engage in the meditation, hearing the words isn't going to help. So, seeing as today's the first session, we're going to start with the preliminaries to meditation. So when we engage in meditation, in each session there is preliminaries we need to do. And even before we go and sit down and do a meditation session, sit somewhere comfortably and so on, you need to prepare yourself, both the location of meditation and yourself. So to start off with the location of your practice, there's lots of examples here, but to rely on the middle length lam rim by Lamson Carper is the one I'm chosen for this teaching, and where he says, as regards staying in a favourable location, the five excellent qualities of a location are easy access to food, clothing, and so forth, in that they can be obtained without trouble. A good sight in that predators and other wild beasts, as well as enemies and the like, do not live there. Good ground in that does not produce diseases. Good company in that one has companions of equal ethics and view. And being well endowed in that during the day there are few people around and at night there is little noise. Then J. Sagapa quotes the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, where it says, locations for wise people's attainment have good access, a good sight, good ground, as well as good companions and conveniences for yoga. So while more specific to the kind of meditation retreat and less about your daily practice, we can think about this still in our daily life. Food and clothing and so on, they're for retreat, mainly in the same with the wild animal predators, wild beasts, enemies. But even in your home, if you're not able to relax and engage in meditation and you're constantly anxious about sort of what animals are going to appear, you're never going to particularly be able to focus on the meditation. And then good ground and that does not produce diseases. You're not somewhere where maybe there's lots of mosquitoes and like in India, we get a lot of mosquitoes that have malaria and so on, or other diseases from mosquitoes. So nowadays, it's not so bad with it. You can sit under a mosquito net. But, in the past, these were problems. So we need to be careful there. Good company, one companion of equal ethics and views refers to the people you're going to being around, especially when you're on retreat. It's best when they're kind of interested in meditation and things because they'll encourage you to practice more and do well. Whereas if the people you're around are always dismissing meditation, saying, why are you wasting your time doing that? You're going to kind of give up and not really progress very well. And then being down during the day, there's a few people around and like little noise because during the day, when there's lots of people around, it's easy to be distracted. And then at night, you want little noise because you want to be able to sleep enough because key factor for meditation is having enough rest. His Holiness Dalai Lama said that sometimes if you're on retreat and the session's not going very well and you're too tired, you're too sleepy to be able to focus, the best thing you can do is end the session and go and have a nap. Because if you're not focusing because you're too tired, you're never going to move forward. So then, with regards to that kind of summarizes the location, but then there are kind of further elaborations on the location. And Longchenpa, who's Finding Rest trilogy kind of elaborates on this, where he talks about in some cases it's advised to be in a cool location with wide open skies, and in certain practices you should be in a warmer location. And also, if you have lots of excitement and or when your mind's jumping around, changing location can be a solution to that. So with regards to this, so there's a so in Longchenpa's Finding Comfort and Ease in Meditation, specifically about Dzogchen in this text, but you can apply it to our meditation. He talks about locations being suitable, so on mountaintops in secluded forests and islands, places which are agreeable to the mind and well suited to the season. And these kind of really common. So you're saying in summer you should meditate in cooler dwellings, because if it's too hot, you're just going to fall asleep in the session. And then in winter, you should stay somewhere warm, because if it's too cold, you can't focus on meditation. And yeah, you should be kind of conscious of your diet as well during this time to make sure you're not too sleepy and you're able to focus. So Longchenpa describes here, snowy regions help to make samadhi clear and awareness bright and lucid. Then later says, forests bring stillness of mind and help us to develop mental stability. And below rocky cliffs, we can feel a vivid sense of impermanence and disenchantment. So you can see there how there are some locations that help as an example. So then the second kind of preliminary is the practitioner. So here we can basically use the outlines Rinpoche wrote, or Lamson Kappa wrote for the middle length Lamrim, where the outlines, there are 5 of few desires, content, completely abandoning one's many activities, pure ethics, and completely abandoning one's conceptualization of desire. So here in few desires kind of means you're not jumping around, your mind not grasping to things and being distracted from meditation. And similarly, contentment kind of elaborates on this. If you're very happy with what you have, it's easy going and things go well. Completely abandoning one's many activities. Again, this refers mainly to retreat. When you're in retreat, you kind of want to do the sessions and not be distracted between them, having to do other activities. Sometimes it's not possible, and you have to be skillful, but that's the ideal way. But then, even when you're doing a daily life session, just setting 5-10 minutes aside, not looking at your phone, and just kind of setting these boundaries. So that's all you're focusing on is the meditation. Then pure ethics. So it's said that it's impossible to attain samadhi, or a state of shanta concentration, without morality. So we need to practice morality while develop here. If you want success in meditation, you need to practice morality as well. The lineage lamas have always said. And then abandoning one's conceptualization of desire. So it's also about thinking about things that you want in the future and not being distracted by thoughts of past and present and future. And, oh, when I finish this meditation, I'll go and do this. Those want to be abandoned. And again, in Longchenpa wrote in Finding Comfort and Ease in Meditation. Secondly, as an individual who takes up the practice, you must have faith, perseverance, renunciation, and a sense of disenchantment. You must be saddened and wearied by samsara and strive for freedom. Renouncing the concerns of this life and seeking eventual enlightenment, you must leave distractions and busyness far behind and have few mental afflictions. Be easygoing and tolerant and have pure perception and great devotion, as well as stability of mind and deep respect towards the teachings. So some of these are more specific to the Vajrayana, and especially Hatha Yoga Dzogchen, where we talk about pure perception and devotion to the Lama. But you need to have this faith, not just blind faith, but the faith of reasoning, the faith of understanding. That you've studied the teachings on meditation properly and you understand what you're doing and why. And then you have perseverance in that you were going to work and put the effort in to have these attainments. And then the kind of renunciations, the disenchantment, the being saddened and wearied by samsara. Because if you don't have the wish to attain liberation, whether it's for the purpose of self or others, your meditation won't actually result in that because you'll be attached to samsaric existence. So if you really want success in meditation, you need to see the faults of samsara. And that gives us then more motivation to practice well. Yeah, and leaving distractions and business far behind and few mental afflictions means you're not being distracted during the sessions. So again, Longchenpa is writing for a retreat here, but even in your daily life, just setting time aside and thinking you're not going to do anything else but practice. And being easygoing, not being too worried about, oh, my cushion's not quite perfect, or the conditions, someone down the road making noise that's distracting. Sometimes these things aren't perfect and you just have to work with the circumstances you have. So then it's kind of the main introduction of the final preliminary, I suppose, is the actual preliminary of doing the meditation session. So in the session before you engage in the meditation, whether it's calm abiding and special insight, mindfulness, anything kind of meditation, you need to set the motivation and do a prayer, like we do at the start of the teaching, even if that's just a very brief taking refuge, the Sangye Chodam, Soni Chodam La verse. You can just recite that 3 times and then begin the session. But ideally, you're going to offer a mandala and request blessings of Shakyamuni Buddha or any of your teachers. That's kind of the ideal circumstances because then that'll give you the blessings to progress and move your mind forward and make much faster progress. So with that, we conclude the introductory teaching, and that also concludes the preliminaries to practice of meditation. So we've discussed the ideal location of meditation, and yourself as the person, and then what you do in the beginning of the session. So then on to today's meditation, we'll look at some mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness meditation is common to all Buddhist traditions, and it's one of the most useful techniques. So in the Pali Canon, in the middle length discourses of the Buddha says, Bhikkhus, this is the only way for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana, namely the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So the 4 foundations are the 4 close placements of mindfulness. They often get called in the sort of Tibetan tradition, and the mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of phenomena. So if you want kind of a Mahayana text as well, in Maitreya's discriminating the middle way or middle from the extremes, says, because of being in the precarious state, because being the cause of craving, because being the basis, and because being non-obscuration, at the entry into the 4 truths, meditate on the close placements of mindfulness. And then in Vasubandhu's Abhidhamma-kosha, the Treasury of Knowledge, he says, one should meditate on the close placements of mindfulness by thoroughly investigating the 2 characteristics of bodies, feelings, minds, and phenomena. So these 2 characteristics are the general characteristics and the specific characteristics of each object. So in the commentary on this, on the to the treasure of knowledge, it says the specific characteristics of the individual entity. The general characteristics are that all products are impermanent, that all is contaminated suffering, and all phenomena are empty and selfless. So yeah, the kind of general characteristics are the most important to meditate on. And depending on the tradition you follow, depends on how many general characteristics you say there are. So in the Pali tradition, they only talk about three: the impermanent, suffering, and no self. And then in the Mahayana tradition, there's four. Then it's the impermanent, suffering, no self, and empty. So this is because as you go through the schools of tenets, it becomes a lot more clear. You see, it's very elaborately. You need quite an elaborate explanation, I suppose, to build up to this distinction. But in the Mahayana schools, there are the subtle and the coarse views of selflessness, and there's also the selflessness of phenomena, which are not accepted by the lower schools, the Vaibhashikas and the Sautrantrikas, where they assert that there is a selfless phenomena to be found, there is something you can find. So that's the distinction of why they say three and four. And then the specific characteristics, like the body refers to the individual processes, the feeling, it's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It's kind of what's unique to each aspect. So that's the introduction to the practice of mindfulness. And then we'll just do a very brief mindfulness of body. So, the posture is not so important for mindfulness. It's not like shamatha, where the posture is quite key. You just want to sit comfortably with your hands maybe in your lap or like on your knees, whichever is comfortable. And then just watch the body and observe. Feel the pressure of your feet or your ankles on the floor or the mat, whatever you're sitting on. The feeling of your buttocks on the chair or cushion. The clothes touching you. So just briefly meditate like that. And then we're going to contemplate the first of general characteristics. Well, all compounding phenomena are impermanent. So just again, watch the body and observe the sensations of the body and the tactile, feeling and so on. And just think, are these in the nature of impermanence? Are they momentary changing? And do they arise, hide and see? And then just hold the conclusion that the body is impermanent. And I think the second about the body being in the nature of suffering. So just examine, we're not just looking at the kind of normal suffering or pain, but we're trying to think about this all compounded form of suffering. So the all pervasive suffering. So just think, is the, you know, what do we experience in our body? Ultimately, we see it's going to cause us pain and die. Can we observe this kind of momentariness and see this will happen? And then think about do the third and the fourth general characteristic, the no self and empty. So, kind of according to your understanding of emptiness, thinking about this no self. So, if you may be looking from a autonomy school position or a lower school, an autonomy position even, you might be thinking, is the self permanent, unitary, and independent? And then this empty aspect being the self-sufficient, substantially empty being self-sufficient, substantially existent. Or if you're from the Preliminaries perspective, this no self being empty, being self-sufficiently substantially existent, and empty of being inherently existent. So just again, briefly, kind of examining the body and thinking, can we observe any part that exists by way of its own characteristics? and try and link in this impermanence conclusion that the body is momentary changing. So how can it exist on its own side if it's made up of all these parts that are rising and falling and seething? They're in this relationship of cause and effect. And then bring to mind the conclusion that there is no self and to be found in the body, and the body is empty. And with that, you can draw your practice to an end. So it's really good to practice mindfulness as regularly as possible. Trying to just do 5 minutes if you can, every day or whatever, or whatever meditation you prefer. And you can do on any of the objects. Obviously, we've just done body now. We'll do feeling and mind phenomena in the future. And yeah, these meditations, while they seem pretty basic, are really important because without doing them, it's very hard to realize impermanence and then realize emptiness, which is how we're liberated from samsara. So understanding this is very key. So then to conclude, we'll recite the dedication prayers. So we'll just recite the dedication of the two bodhicittas, the Jangchob Sancho Rinpoche Marke Panam Keyu Chi Keba Nyamba Mepa Yang Gong Ye Gong Du Belwa Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Marke Panam Keyu Chi Keba Nyamba Mepa Yang Gong Ye Gong Du Belwa Sho. And then the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all our precious teachers. Gangwei, Vawei, Kowei, Kamso, Pengdan, Numa, Malu, Jongwei, Ni, Chenwei, Ziwang, Tenzin, Gatsoi, Shape, Site, Batu, Tengu, Chi. And then think we need to dedicate all our lives, never to be separated from these perfect gurus and the teachings and practice. Kiewa kundu yada lama dang drameja ki pangana chochin sadam la ki on ten razoni doji changi go hanyok dosho. Thank you very much. We'll continue next time.